What is up, Rangers and hockey fans? Thank you all so much for chiming in for a new breaking episode of Rangers Review. Myself, Wardy, alongside my good friend Statboy Steven, big diehard Rangers fans, if you guys aren't aware by that by now. But we have a breaking episode here that we're doing a live stream on YouTube. And of course, this will also be made in podcast form, probably how you're listening as well. But a lot of important news just came out for the Rangers, something we didn't expect because, one, it's not a Monday. It feels like anytime, any place that the Rangers actually have something happen over this past year, it's normally on a Monday. No, on a Sunday, they decide to, in fact, extend MIKA Zibanejad to a massive 8-year deal at 8.5 mil AAV. So we're going to be sharing our initial reactions here. Seeing a lot of people on the chat. We'll be addressing that as well. A shorter episode today as we're just breaking down this, really impactful news. So, Steven, what was your initial reaction, to start your Sunday like this?
Well, I started my Sunday a little earlier, of course.
I know you did, but just go with it.
I like the AAV. I like the cap hit. Not a big fan of the term. 8 years is a bit much, but yeah. I guess if we signed him for a shorter term, the AAV would have been higher. So giving him a year extra to get it down to 8.5 million makes a lot of sense with all the other contracts that are coming up in the following years. Yeah, it's not perfect. I think the first 5 years of the contract he'll be fine.
It's like anything else. I feel like this felt inevitable if they were going to extend him.
It's a little bit like when we traded for Rick Nash. The first 4 years you're going to get value out of that contract. The final 2, in that case, you're going to struggle a little bit. It's going to be the same with Zibanejad. He's not going to be worth his contract for the full 8 years.
No, that is beyond doubtful.
That said, I don't think this contract is an issue.
Agreed.
I think the 2 contracts that are an issue are the Jacob Trouba and the Chris Kreider ones.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen anything about no move clauses with Zibanejad, but Chris Kreider and Jacob Trouba's no move clause, they expire in 2024.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything with no move to this point. It may be announced after we've already done this episode, and that's probably okay. I'm assuming there's definitely some years in there. That almost feels like, it has to happen just from how contracts have been on longer term.
If you look at the Barkov contract that was signed earlier this week, Barkov had a no move clause for 6 years and then a modified no trade clause where he can submit a 16-team trade list for the final 2 years. If the Rangers do something similar with Zibanejad, I'd be okay with that because it gives you some flexibility in the final 2 or 3 years. And that would ease my mind a little bit about this contract. And am I happy that Zibanejad's staying? Sure. Am I super excited about the contract? No. Does this mean the Rangers are out on Eichel? Yes. That there's no way they're going after Jack Eichel with this contract on the books, and with Fox getting 8 or 9 million next year, and with Panarin with 11.6 million. Shesterkin, how much is Shesterkin making? 6?
He's making just under 6.
Yeah.
Varies on the year.
And then Kreider and Trouba, who combined for almost 15 million. It's just not going to work. You're going to have $50 million tied up in 6 players. There's no way you can afford another player at 10 million. There's no way Buffalo is retaining a big portion for another 5 years. That's just never going to happen. So, yeah, we can put the Eichel rumors to rest as Ranger fans.
I'm sure you're more relieved than anyone else. A lot of Ranger fans are, though, at the same time, too. Look, the Eichel saga has been going on really since I believe it was Bob McKenzie that tweeted out that the Rangers were interested like a year ago. So it's been going on a while now between that speculation. And while I would always love Jack Eichel on the Rangers, I think that this is fine. To be quite honest with you, there's still so much uncertainty with him. We'll see what ends up happening with him. But this isn't about Jack Eichel. This is about the Rangers making sure that MIKA Zibanejad is going to be locked up as their number 1 center for the foreseeable future. And yes, I don't love the back half of the contract like anyone else, but it's one of those things, especially when it comes to hockey, it just, that always happens. The likelihood of you being able to land a deal with Zibanejad, who's currently, at the age of 28 for a 6-year deal, felt unlikely. And I think the Rangers need to make a statement to Zibanejad, similar to what they did with Kreider when it comes to, they want them to actually be part of their core going forward. And while that Kreider contract isn't pretty, Zibanejad, there's more respect to it. If you look at his numbers throughout his career, as long as he's staying healthy, and even with how slow of a start he had last year between getting COVID and just being inconsistent, there's no denying that Zibanejad is one of the most, offensively gifted centermen in the game today, and he's going to continue to thrive in his prime right now. If you look, he had 50 points in only 56 games last year after having how many points in the first 15 to 20? It literally felt like he had little to no production whatsoever. He knocked 24 goals, 26 assists. The year before that, he had his career high season, and immaculate only one more game, 57 games. Mika, let's not forget, he had 75 points, including 41 goals and 34 assists. The year before that, 74 and 82. So, yeah, as long as Mika stayed healthy, he has been on a continued direction upward. And I really do believe that this, over the next 4 or 5 years, is going to benefit him and the Rangers a ton here, because look, they need to make sure that they lock down a guy. The Rangers have had instability when it comes to their center position, as it was for a while now. It makes sense to lock him up. I like this contract. I don't love the term. No one's going to like it. I think that's something that the Rangers may very well be Rangers-esque down the line, and either buy him out or, try to get rid of him at simple cost, something along those lines. Yeah. That's the only thing I don't like about Rangers and long-term contracts is what we've seen, between Sather, Gordon, and may very well be the case now where Drury is, always having to buy out those contracts with the last, say 2 upwards of 3 years left. It's not appealing. It's definitely sucks when you have that, like deferred money, if you will, that you just have to deal with. But at the end of the day, you need to lock him up. I'm glad they did it. Mika, he's one of the best Rangers, and he's going to continue to be. And I think this is really going to help juvenize him going into the year, not having this loom over his head now, because there's a big thing when you're going to be an upcoming free agent per se. What are you going to do? What is your impact on the team going to be per se? There are guys that thrive in that role, knowing that they really try to repel and get the absolute most out of them in their final year, then they would potentially be a free agent. But then there's also other guys that actually thrive knowing that they're locked up and secure. And I think that's what Mika's going to show. So in a nutshell, really, really happy with this. I'm so happy that Mika's staying with the Rangers. Don't love the latter half of that deal, but I do expect there to be, either some type of no move, no trade clause. Hopefully it's not for the entirety of the deal, but again, we'll see, as I'm sure it'll be broken down probably after this episode, if at all. I'd be very surprised if there's neither of those two things in it.
Yeah, and comparing him to Kreider doesn't really make sense to me, because he plays a position where we don't have any depth.
My point. Yep.
If you're looking at Kreider on that left wing, you have Panarin and Lafreniere. On that right wing, where he might be able to play, you have Kako and Kravtsov. But take away Zibanejad, and your top center is Ryan Strome, who's not a bad player, but ideally Ryan Strome is your second line center. And yeah, looking at last year, we knew he had COVID the first couple of weeks, and I think he had 3 points in his first 15 games. So that would mean he had 47 in his final 41 games. So he was over a point per game player for the majority of the season. You're back?
Yeah. I just had to close my door because it was creaking and making a loud noise. Go
ahead. Sorry, he was over a point per game for the majority of last season. Of course, the season prior, as you mentioned, 75 points in 57 games. 74 before that in 82 games. I think in 2018, 2019, that was before Panarin got here. He was the first player since Gaborik, I think.
Yes, I'm pretty sure you're correct. I remember
to hit 70 points.
Yep,
for the Rangers.
Yeah, the Rangers won a long period of time of having the Matt Zuccarellos of the world, among others.
We went almost a decade with basically our top point production from a single player being 59, 60, or 61. So for him to go then to 74 and then the 75 and 57 games was great. Look, I think Zibanejad's going to be a valuable player for this team for at least 4 or 5 years. It's just the latter half of that contract that worries me a little bit.
Oh, yeah. No. Again, we're both in agreement on that one. Yeah. I think all Ranger fans can agree. When a guy is going to be, it's 8-year deal, he's 28 years of age right now. So it'll be like, 36 by the time that deal would be done, right around there. So, I don't, that's something that we'll worry about when the time comes. But if Mika stays healthy, maybe.
Would you rather have signed him for 5 years at $10 million a year?
No. I think that would have hurt the Rangers more. for for the guys that they have to pay coming up, including Fox. Yeah, no, that's exactly why they went with this longer term deal also, and we're more willing, because what was Barkov's AAV again?
10 million.
Yeah, so this is 1.5 lower than Barkov, and don't get me wrong, Barkov is the better overall player over Zibanejad. There's no denying that. But Zibanejad, I think, is a criminally underrated player in the game today. And while, again, I love Jack Eichel, and I think he would be fantastic for this team, the Rangers need to make sure that they had a commitment one way or another, regardless on if it was Eichel or Zibanejad. They need to make sure that one of them was a lock at least. And I'm glad they did that now. And I'm really curious to see now how Zibanejad is going to be doing going into the season, as the season is just about to begin, right? And a question and I think this is a good question to ask right now, and, it may very well still be the assumed guy that we believe in, Kreider. Could this be a telltale sign of potentially Mika being the next captain with how they locked him up last minute, like this type thing going into the year? Could this, in my mind, this would only increase the likelihood rather than decrease. And it very well could be Kreider again, could be someone else that we're not even thinking of, maybe a Trouba, but I think that there's a better argument to be had that it may very well be Zibanejad.
Yeah, I still think Kreider and Trouba are the front runners for the captaincy.
I think Kreider, I'm not sold on Trouba, however.
It depends on what they're looking for in a captain. Kreider is the obvious candidate. He's been here the longest. He is the longest tenured Ranger. The second longest tenured Ranger is Zibanejad, who arrived in 2016. The third longest is Eichel, who arrived in 2017. So everyone else has been here for four years or less. Kreider makes sense. Zibanejad is obviously in the conversation. I don't know how much this changes their decision, though. I mean,
I think their decision's already made.
That's basically where I was going with this. I think they made their decision before they agreed to an extension with Zibanejad.
I agree with that. I think it's been locked in for a bit now, and it's just not made public yet.
Yeah. So I still think it's going to be Kreider. Although, I mean, if I have to pick a name out of left field to be the captain.
Wait, let me guess. Let me think. Have you discussed this name before?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Because I was going to say, I know you proposed Lafreniere.
Oh, that's a good one too. No, I was actually thinking of Ryan Lindgren.
Oh, yeah. I think the Rangers have multiple candidates that could actually do the job well. But you're right. I think more than anything, the veteran leadership aspect is why I think Kreider's the most favorable. Yeah. And just, the long-term commitment. We'll see, though. Again, this is a good problem to have. There's no issue either way. I'm looking forward to the Rangers actually making this announcement. And I know that we talked about in our last episode that the audio was so terrible. My apologies again, everybody, if you're watched on YouTube at least. But last episode when we talked about the Rangers and regarding, what was it? I'm actually blanking right now regarding captaincy. I'm blanking. Go ahead with anything else you have to say. I'm trying to remember. I don't know why. I just lost it. It literally was just in my head and popped right out. In general, when it comes to Zibanejad, this is what I meant to ask you. What are going to be the salary implications now for the team this season and going forward? How significant are they expected to be?
Look, I don't think for the Rangers anything changes. I don't think they were planning on trading Zibanejad at the deadline had they not come to an agreement yet. I don't think this changes the upcoming season at all. Zibanejad was going to be here from the first game until the last. But it does make it a little bit easier now going into the season, knowing that this is also the core you're going to have next year.
Yes.
Of course, everyone wants to know about Adam Fox. What's Adam Fox going to sign for? I'm curious to see what's going to happen with Ryan Strome.
Yeah, me too. That's
because
fair.
I know we all want Philip Eichel to step up and replace Ryan Strome
Shout out
in
to
the top
Heedle for
six.
having a hat trick last night too in the final preseason game.
Yeah, Heedle had a
Wrap it
hat
up.
trick. I think Karko was the best player last night and in the entire preseason.
Yeah,
by the way.
from everything that I saw, it looks like he dominated. Did he finish preseason with 5 points in 4 games?
Something like that. But it was more than just the points. You know,
oh, I know.
It was,
he looks like an animal, and we'll talk about that more in next episode.
Yeah, he was stealing the pucks in the neutral zone. He was skating away from players like Barzal, you know, who is one of the best skaters in the league, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Especially one of the fastest. Players just bounce off him. You know, once he has the puck, they cannot take the puck off him. He drew the penalty in overtime that eventually led to the overtime winner that he assisted on.
Yep.
He had a great game. Anyway, but going back to the season we're going into now, Adam Fox is going to be a question mark in terms of how much he's going to sign for. But Ryan Strome, I think Ryan Strome is going to be back next year. And I know Ranger fans really want Philip Heedle to step up and then Morgan Barron to step into the third line role and have Kevin Rooney or Justin Ridges on the fourth line, and then use the cap space we get with Strome coming off the books to sign guys like Kakko and Kravtsov. I get it. But if Strome has another season like he had the last 2 years,
you can't justify just wanting to walk from him right away. Then
how do you justify letting him walk for nothing?
Yeah, no,
when a player puts up that production and your team is not changing either. I mean, listen, if you're in a situation where his line mates are out or you know they're free agents and you're not re-signing them either, sure, I get it. Panarin's still going to be here. And as much as people say Panarin makes Strome a better player, I think it goes both ways. Because let's not forget that Panarin put up career numbers in only 69 games last year. And this year again, I think how many points did he have this year? 95? Let me look that up quickly.
Panarin?
Because Panarin. Let me quickly look that up.
I got it.
The most impressive thing about Panarin
in the shortened season had 58 and 42, and the year before that he had a career high 95 and 69. Yep.
Yeah. So if you go on to the NHL.com website and you go to stats and you sort by point per game season totals, the top 5 in Rangers history is Jean Rattel, Frank Boucher, Jaromir Jagr, and Artemi Panarin twice.
Yeah. He has quickly ingrained himself in this organization.
That's how good his seasons have been. He was on pace for 116 points this past season over 82 games.
Yep.
His career high is before he joined the Rangers was 87. So, yeah, you can say that Panarin makes Strome better, but it works both ways. Panarin put up career numbers in back-to-back seasons with Ryan Strome on his line. When Panarin was out, Ryan Strome still produced. So, moving on from Ryan Strome and letting him walk for free, I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, I think it's obvious that what we've seen with them over the past couple of years is they complement each other very well.
Yeah.
And while there's always going to be that narrative, oh, you know, Strome's only doing this because Panarin, it's been proven by now that isn't solely the case, especially for times that Artemi was out. And even then, you can still make the argument that why does it matter? Where's Panarin going? What do you need to worry about is my point. As long as those two are connected and thriving, by all means, that's perfectly fine with me. You know, like it's same argument can be said for so many players along great players. Think of the Chris Kunitz of the world with Sidney Crosby or whoever it's going to be, Malkin, whoever, you know, other wingers. Like, yes, they're definitely not going to thrive. Same thing with Connor McDavid and his wingers to the same extent, but it doesn't matter. Like, as long as they're not going anywhere, like, and you're not trying to, if you're not going to give them a deal that's going to directly hurt the team where maybe, you know, the other guy, the main top guy is going to be gone soon. It simply doesn't matter. So it's a stupid argument to be had. I think what we realize now over time. But to kind of wrap up things on Zibanejad here, just again, it's fantastic to see the Rangers show this commitment and, you know, go forward now into the season. And while they're definitely going to have, as I originally asked you, like salary implications for the upcoming free agents for sure, knowing that you get a guy like Zibanejad to avoid him potentially hitting the market, to avoid any kind of nonsense of thinking about should we potentially try to trade him at the deadline, say they're underperforming or not where they need to be. They don't have to worry about any of that now. And I think that the comfortability now of having him locked up is going to pay dividends for this team. So now you get into, after this season, you're going to have some big contracts you have to hand out. The smaller ones include Sammy Blais and also Ryan Strome. Strome will be a decent amount. Vitaly Krasov, RFA already. Kako will be very interesting. Julian Gauthier, that doesn't really bother much. But then getting on to Keandre Miller is going to be an RFA.
No. Keandre Miller is
RFA. I read the stat wrong. Yeah, it's Adam Fox. Adam Fox will be the huge one out of all this. And of course, Libor Hayek. No, I'm joking. But all in all, Foxy leads the way for what we have to worry about for the near future.
Yeah.
But they'll get it done. I'm confident in them. And I'm glad to see right before the season starts that we're on a positive note. And now it'll be interesting to see who exactly hops on that ice, potentially for game one, even though I know you want to be for the Rangers home game, to see who the captain will be.
Yeah.
I will be in attendance, however, as I mentioned to you, to everybody that's listening to this episode. I will be going to the Rangers' first game of the season in DC. Very excited for that. Hopefully they play well. Ovechkin, I don't know what his status is going to be. I know he just got hurt recently from trying to make a check, so that could benefit the Rangers in the scenario he's not playing. Not that I wish injury on him. I just don't know what the status is on that front. Very, very much looking forward to that, and looking forward to seeing Zibanejad a locked up man with no uncertainty now for a while.
Yeah, and another thing to keep in mind is the cap penalties. This upcoming season's $4.4 million. Next season it drops to 3.4, and unless we have another buyout, 2023, 2024, we should be clean of cap penalties.
Yep.
So that's also important. That could go a long way into rounding out this team. But what'll be important for the Rangers is, we've hit on players either in trades or drafting. With Lindgren, Fox, Miller, Lundqvist is looking good. Kako is looking great. Lafreniere is making steps. Kravtsov is a better player already. Even Gauthier is showing things. Having those players on cheap contracts contributing is great. Once those players outlive their entry-level contracts, though, you need new players coming in to make an impact. You cannot be a contender without players on entry-level contracts making an impact.
Absolutely.
So who's going to be part of the next group of players that contribute on this team on an entry-level deal?
Outside of the players that we currently have? You're looking at the obvious ones on defense. Zach Jones. Yeah, I think he comes to mind right away. Potentially Braden Schneider as well in a scenario where Trouba's traded. And that's kind of, like the next step for them, because they're probably not going to have room. Offensively, offensively, I honestly think to a certain extent, just depending on how long this bottom six stays shaken up, Lauri Pajuniemi. I think that, again, I'm going to stay with him. I think he's someone that can impact this team over the next couple of years. Outside that, I think other guys are a little bit, a ways away. It all depends on trades and things. But a moral of the story, the Rangers are in a great position now, as we've talked endlessly, when it comes to just how much capital, how much stock they have with their prospects, and how deep this farm is versus what it used to be. Because if you see other teams as well, and while, not all of them are great examples, like Toronto, for instance, has thrived off of guys being on entry-level deals, especially if they say hired them, I shouldn't say even entry-level, but when they gone certain Europeans, for example, while they haven't had playoff success to the way that they would like to, that's an example of a team that's been really heavy when it comes to their cap, but has been able to work it to a certain extent. Tampa Bay is the prime example, as they've won back-to-back cups and have still been able to use some guys that aren't on long-term deals yet. They do great with their drafting. Same could even be said with the Hurricanes with certain players. There's a lot to go around, but the moral of the story, again, is the depth that the Rangers currently have with their prospect pool is going to really benefit them going forward here.
Yeah.
Even in the scenario where maybe they don't commit long-term to a Kravtsov, for instance, or someone else that maybe just doesn't reach expectations. It could be a Pavel Buchnevich 2.0, where down the line, even while they're in their prime, they already have guys that are, right there to really take that and on a cheaper deal where they can handle losing one or multiple of them. And I think that's something we're going to see the Rangers in scenarios not often, but few and far in between will happen over the next 5 years.
Yeah, and this is why two things. The Hartford Wolfpack has an important role to play in our cup window.
Always.
And when we look at the Tampa Bay Lightning, you see guys that have developed in Syracuse. And I mentioned this before. It's not just their drafting, because there are undrafted players there as well. Alex Boré-Boulet, who's now on waivers today, undrafted player. Yanni Gourde, undrafted. Andre Palat was a 7th round pick. That's not good drafting. You just pick a guy, you send him to your minor league team, and you try to develop him into an NHL, and it works because they have a system in place that gets it done.
Proper development. Yeah, we I feel like we've talked about this every single episode.
Exactly. But the reason we talk about it so much is because it is so important. And for the longest time, the Hartford Wolfpack has been a graveyard for prospects.
Yep.
Guys like Ryan Grubb, Evgeny Grachev. I can go on. I can name 20.
We don't need to.
Prospects who never developed into anything while playing in Hartford.
Mm-hmm.
And the ones that did make it were the exception, but you don't want it to be the exception. You want it to be the rule. But also, with the importance of entry-level contracts still contributing to your success, especially in a salary cap league, I don't want to start trading away first-round picks, which is another reason why I'm really not interested in a Jack Eichel trade.
And that's a completely fair argument. I've never been one that's been in favor of, the Sather effect, if you will. Like through my young life as a Rangers fan, that's all we saw for year after year after year until we came to a conclusion that while we had a solid core group, this 5-year run plus, it's not working. They can't get over that.
The thing is, when the Rangers started trading away the first round picks, it made sense. 2012, you make the conference final and you go, okay, what are we missing? We're missing that top end talent.
Correct. It made
go out
before they want this trickle down effect. It's snowball.
So you go out and you trade for Rick Nash, who carried a franchise on his back for a decade. I think his struggles in New York have often clouded his stellar career in Columbus.
In a nutshell, not to get on a tangent about Nash here, but he came into the Rangers and was a different player than what the Rangers were expecting. It's simply put, especially when he was utilized playing in the Olympics under Babcock for Team Canada. I remember perfectly. That's when he was first toyed with on PK, and that's where this dominant two-way forward was birthed. And that's just something that wasn't the case when he was in Columbus because he was a one-man show there.
Yeah. So you can argue they went after the wrong guy, but you cannot argue that they shouldn't have gone after a guy there, because when you're in a position, when you're in the final four in the playoffs, that's when you trade away some futures to put you over the top. The following year, they go after St. Louis, and in 2015, they go after Keith Yandel. It was a bit much, but you try to win now at that point.
It's really one of those scenarios, and we can look at Tampa as a great example too. No one's going to complain as long as you win it all in the end. But the Rangers, unfortunately, were never able to get there, and that's why it looks bad in hindsight.
The point is, the Rangers aren't in a position, in my opinion, where they should be trading away future assets to put themselves over the top.
Because they need to give these guys time, in my opinion.
It's not that. But with the increased talent, you're not making yourself a contender. You're making yourself a playoff team.
Yeah.
You need to be a playoff team first, and then that trade at the deadline or that trade in the summer then puts you over the top and makes you a contender.
That's the point I was trying to get across. They need to get to somewhere. They need to solidify themselves to a certain level and then take that next step to kind of go back to not their old ways, but just be willing at the right price for certain guys.
Yeah, don't trade away first round picks and top prospects to become a playoff team. Become a playoff team first, and then start trading away some assets.
And learn exactly how much that you need to address, if at all, because the Rangers would be in a stupid scenario where say they trade ahead of time and got rid of some guys, right? Then you have the risk of what if this still doesn't work out? Maybe they should. You want to ride out to know what you're working with. And again, I know we keep referencing Tampa, but they're a great example. Let's not forget when they went back to the Cup, the early 2010s, and lost to Chicago, right? They were on the cusp, but they weren't there yet. They didn't have the depth nor enough playoff experience to that point versus a team like Chicago, who, if you look at what they did that year, they made, trade deadline moves. I think maybe that was the year they acquired Michael Handzus. And was that also the year that they acquired from the Flyers? I'm blanking. Timonen? It might have been on defense. No less, my point is that they already had themselves built up and knew what they need to address. Tampa took them a while, but they finally figured out the core that they're working with, but also the proper trades that need to be made to get them to take that next step. And that's something that's a playbook that every playoff team has been doing and should continue to make sure that you don't step your foot too forward on, making rash decisions. Wait until you know what you're working with and then reevaluate things.
Yeah. Yeah, and of course, there's the other side of the coin where you have the examples of Ottawa and San Jose.
Yes.
Where you give up a first-round pick for a player you think is going to put you over the top, but then it turns into a fourth overall selection.
San Jose was full. Like, there's perfect reasons as to why everything fell. Like, San Jose, they never came off as a team that, Erik Karlsson would be their game. Granted, I did not expect them to downgrade the way they did as soon as they acquired Karlsson, but he was already at a point in his career where there was plenty of risk coming off of his injury. And how exactly would he be able to rebound? And I love Erik Karlsson. He's one of the best defensemen I've ever witnessed. My brother, he's always been a diehard fan of his. But, to put that much stock into your defense of all things, especially for a defense that wasn't strong defensively, you need to have a balance. They never had that balance, and it ended up being their downfall. So, their example of what not to be. They tried, but they pushed too forward. With
the same with Ottawa. Ottawa made the conference final in 2017. They traded for Matt Duchene in that weird three-way trade with Nashville and Colorado. And that first-round pick turned into Bowen Byram for Colorado.
Yep.
Because I remember it was a conditional first, and
Samuel Girard acquired from Nashville.
Yeah, so it was a fourth overall pick in 2018, and they opted to keep that pick because they got Brady Tkachuk with it. And they were hoping that their pick the following year was going to be better, or like a lower pick because of their better performance. And it still turned out to be a fourth overall pick. So those are the situations where you have to be careful. And I don't think the Rangers are in a position yet where they should be trading away futures. Like I said, get there first. Make sure Kakko and Lafreniere have a couple of seasons under their belts. Maybe a playoff or two. And then I always said our window of contention opens in 2024.
Yeah, I know you've been an advocate for that for a while. And when you look at the current lineup, there's good reason to believe that guys are going to hit a certain point by then.
Yeah, and I've had people say to me, "Why is it going to take so long?" Because
it may be beforehand. Again, there's a lot of uncertainty, but I think the safe route, you're saying, is my point.
But it's not unheard of for a team to go from a top 3 pick to being a contender. Or it's pretty rare for a team to do that in less than 5 years.
You're picking a safer bet.
2024 is a 5-year window, a 5-year span where you get from one point to the next. And if you look at a team like Chicago, they drafted Taves, they drafted Kane, and then they added Marian Hossa. They had Duncan Keith on defense. It still took them 6 years from their first high pick, which they really ruined it with Cam Barker, but still, their first top 5 pick to winning the Cup took them 6 years. It took the Penguins 7 years. It took the Kings 5 years, and it took the Bruins 5 years with that soft reboot they did in 2006.
You're going with the trends of what we've seen universally.
Exactly.
Yep. And I think that's fair. I don't disagree with that. And of course, will I be, jumping for joy if the Rangers have themselves a dominant year and have a deep playoff run? Absolutely. But, we need to see it to believe it. Once we get there, we'll talk about it then. But let's just worry about going this year and making playoffs. What they do in playoffs, I'm going to get emotional, worry about it more then. But for right now, let's just make sure that they can actually get there and then go from there. And I think that really is a great way to wrap up this episode, guys. So again, if you're listening live in the live stream, thank you so much for chiming in for this episode of Rangers Review, episode 34 now. We got a lot more coming. The next episode is going to be also on this upcoming Tuesday, the night before the first game of the season in DC. So stay tuned for that as well, folks. We'll be taking questions then. We're not going to be doing now because this is a short episode for people that are in the live stream. But if you're listening on podcast, it doesn't really matter. A lot more changes, like I said, will be coming in the near future between logo change, how the approach is on YouTube, and all that fun stuff. So stay tuned for that. But Steven, do you have any final remarks here before we wrap up this one?
No. Yeah, one thing that I thought was funny actually. Last season, MIKA Zibanejad had more points than the Ottawa Senators.
Total?
The Ottawa Senators finished with 51 points in the standings.
Oh, and I was about to say, I'm like, total. I'm like, what are you talking about?
No. I'm not talking about production. I'm just comparing Mika's production to.
Just to an overall team success. Yeah. That's funny.
It's it's just some weird thing that I.
Steven woke up and said, "How do I throw shit on the Ottawa Senators today?" There you go.
I don't even dislike the Ottawa Senators. I think they are probably the least corrupt Senators in Canada.
Coming from the man that lives in Dublin.
But other than that, let's go Rangers. I'm looking forward to the to opening night on Wednesday.
Okay, yeah, me too. And one last tidbit on Ottawa. I really like their young group that they have now, but I will always have a sour taste in my mouth because I've never been a fan of Nick Foligno. I don't appreciate those early 2010 runs, Nick Foligno in Ottawa. I did not like him, and that will stay near and dear to me for a while. That's all I gotta say. Nothing personal, just I don't like Nick Foligno.
Yeah, during his time in Ottawa, Carlson was likable, but other than that, I didn't really have any player on that team that I was like, oh yeah, that's a nice guy. No.
Yeah, there's a lot more that they currently have in their rebuild that I'm very appealed to versus what used to be. But
I just feel bad for Senator fans with Melnick still at the helm, and
they do have a lot of really good young prospects though. Like they have a lot of great young talent. They're flooded with talent. They just need to make sure they can properly develop.
They did actually announce it in Ontario. They're going to full capacity for sporting events.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Not that affects the Ottawa Senators, of course.
All right, we're done. Steven's just terrible today. My goodness gracious.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, Ottawa. Direct your complaints to Steven at statboy_Steven on Twitter.
Yeah. Or complain about it in an Uber.
That's true. Goodbye, folks. MIKA ZIBANEJAD, New York Rangers, the next 8 years. 9 years, including this year. All right, guys. We'll be back on Tuesday. Talk to you soon. Let's go Rangers.